Today we're going to learn how to make small beer, the American colonial version of Gator-Ade.
I just said, yes man, right away, anything.
So, I don't know about you, but I hate throwing away the spent grain that I inevitably have left over from a whiskey mash or a beer. Small beers are low alcohol beers that are made by remashing your spent grain, and I had the spent grain from a Parti-Gyle whiskey mash that I had done the night before. This technique of getting multiple beers out of a single grain bill is actually called Parti-Gyle Brewing. I think it might be one of my new favorite things. And the cool thing is that you can add different hops at different timing schedules and get three very distinctly different beers. But you may be thinking, why would I bother? Why would I want to do this? Well, why the hell not? This is a hobby. You know, part of the fun is experimenting with new things that we've never tried before just to see what's going to happen. Especially in this circumstance, it doesn't cost you anything extra except maybe a little bit of hops and maybe a little bit of yeast, depending on what you're going to do with them. You know, you're just going to end up throwing all that grain out anyway. Luckily, I've got a compost pile, so all that spent grain is going to feed my garden next year. But if I can get some more surprise-free beer out of it before it starts feeding the worms, then I'm going to do it. So if you're like me and you're new to Parti-Gyle Brewing and small beers in general, that's probably because you aren't currently living in the 1700s and you have access to clean drinking water and plumbing. Parti-Gyle Brewing and small beers were popular back then because it gave you an excellent way to extract absolutely everything you could out of your grain, which was precious. But it also gave you several different sources of hydration. Before we developed plumbing and water treatment plants and really had any idea about pathogens in water, your water supply from your local river or lake could possibly kill you if you just raw dogged a glass of it. So to get around that possibility of dysentery lurking in their drinking water, our ancestors tended to boil whatever it was they were going to be drinking. Whether it was plain water, tea, coffee, beer, whatever, it was going to be boiled just so that it was safe. And contrary to popular myth, the alcohol in beer does nothing to kill off bacteria, especially with a small beer that has, you know, like 2% alcohol in it. There are bacteria that can live in 15% alcohol and they love it, they just turn it into vinegar. But, you know, you can't really use full strength beers as a source of like everyday hydration. You're not going to be out in the field working, plowing, and throw down 3 pints of, you know, like a strong ale or something in order to, you know, keep on working and stay hydrated for the day. Otherwise, you're not going to get much work done. You're going to be asleep underneath a tree over on the edge of the field, and then your whole family's going to be disappointed in you because the potato crop didn't come in. So you need an alternative that was low strength and tasted good and could give you the hydration you needed. And that's where small beers are a perfect fit. They're easy to make, they're practical and economical, and they're surprisingly delicious. And historically speaking, small beers were so common as a way of regular hydration that it was completely normal to see young children drinking small beer with meals. So anyway, that's the quick history lesson, but let's get on to the process. So the original Parti-Gyle whiskey that I did in this video right up here, the grain bill was 12 pounds of malted barley and 2 pounds of malted oats. And I had actually mashed that the night before in 5 gallons of water. Side note here, obviously that's not best practices. If you're gonna do Parti-Gyle Brewing, do it all in the same day. Don't just let your grain sit dry overnight because it might turn funky. Luckily, mine was ice cold, and so it was totally fine in the morning. It didn't even have a funky aroma. Otherwise, I never even would have attempted this project. So for that whiskey, I actually had to mash the grain for 2.5 hours because I wasn't getting good extraction on it. And then I sparged it with a whole gallon of water. So honestly, going into this project, I didn't really think there was going to be much left. I thought I'd be lucky to get anything out of a second running, so I only added 3 gallons of water to that second mashing. And I brought the temp up to 145 and let it mash for 90 minutes. Off that second mash, I pulled 2.5 gallons at a whopping 1.024. I was not expecting that kind of a reading on my hydrometer. And if I boiled that to make a beer, I'd probably get something in the 1.03 somethings. So that was going to give me a potential alcohol content for that second running of around 4%. Well, that's a light beer. That's like Coors Light or Bud Light. And that was way higher than what I was looking for. I wanted to try a small beer. So I actually took that wort from the second mashing and then added it to my poitín mash so that I could have some more volume for that project. Since I had had such good results with that second mashing, I decided to go and try it one more time. So I added another 3 gallons to that spent grain, brought it up to 145 and let it mash for about 4 hours. I don't think it probably needed 4 hours, but I got busy doing some other stuff and I just let it go. So what I ended up with off of that third mash was almost 3 gallons with a pre-boil gravity reading of 1.008. Now if I had just taken that, cooled it, and fermented it, I'd have gotten a small beer around 1.5% ABV. But I wanted to treat this one like an actual beer, so I boiled it for an hour, and then I added about 9 grams of hops when I had 45 minutes left in the boil, and then I added some Irish moss when I had about 10 minutes left in the boil for clarity. So after the boil, I ended up with 2 gallons at 1.018. And if that fermented all the way out to dryness, I'd get a beer around 2.3% ABV. So I cooled it down and I pitched some of the Nottingham ale yeast colony that I've been keeping fresh in the refrigerator. So then I just closed it up and let it ferment. The fermentation activity stopped after about 3 or 4 days, but I went ahead and gave it 2 weeks to drop clear. So the final gravity was 1.003, which gives us a final ABV reading of almost 2% alcohol. So I ended up adding 2 ounces of sugar into about 4 ounces of water that I microwaved in order to sterilize everything and help the sugar dissolve. Then I mixed that with my beer and then bottled it up. So before I get to the tasting, I just want to thank these people right down here for supporting my channel, and thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. You guys are amazing, and I could not do fun projects like this if it wasn't for you guys, so thank you very much. If you're interested in joining my Patreon page to support the channel, go ahead and check out the link down in the video description. So now it's been about 9 or 10 days after bottling day, and I am ready to try this beer, because when I tried it pre-bottling, it was really good. I was very surprised with how delicious that uncarbonated wort was. Got to do the thing. Ready? Oh, nice. All right, let's see how she pours. Nice head on that. So yeah, I just went with 1 ounce of sugar per gallon. That gives you a pretty substantial amount of carbonation. You can go with a little bit less, but so it's a little hazy. I'm pretty sure that's from the oats. But we got good carbonation, nice little head. So it's got a decent body to it, and I think that's from the oats. Good mouthfeel, but it's not thick or anything like that. Nice and citrusy, a little bit floral from the hops. And I'm getting a nice kind of breadiness from the malt, which is surprising to me because it went through 3 mashings. I'm surprised you get that much flavor from it. Yeah, I could crush this all day long. And the thing is, that's kind of what it was designed for. It was designed so you could literally drink this stuff all day long and never get intoxicated, never lose your edge, so that you could keep working hard and doing what you needed to do, but have a clean source of hydration that also tasted really good. And you're getting a little bit of calories and some electrolytes and stuff in there, so this really is kind of close to Gator-Ade. So, yeah, you should do this. If you want to try and replicate this, check down in the video description. I've got the full recipe and method for everything, and I'll go ahead and put links for the oat malt and the barley malt and the hops that I use. I think that you could do it with just about any beer style. Something with caramel and crystal malts in it I think would be pretty tasty. Even darker styles that are going to have more roasty, toasty characters. It'd almost be like sparkling coffee if you did something like a stout that had a lot of chocolate malt or black malts in it. So play around with it. The one thing I'll say is, because this has so little alcohol in it, you want to go easy with your hops. Dial it way back. Maybe use a beer calculator, a beer recipe calculator, to aim for around, between 5 and 10 IBUs. Very low hop addition, because there's just not enough alcohol to really support a lot of bitterness. This is completely new to me, so I'm still at the experimental stage. I'm excited to keep playing around with it and see what I can do. Alright, so if you enjoyed this video, if you learned anything, do me a favor and hit the like button, because it really helps out the channel. If you like this kind of stuff, if you want to see what I'm going to do next time, hit the subscribe button and the little bell right next to it so you can get notified when I post new content. If you have any questions, comments, personal experiences where you've done Parti-Gyle Brewing or small beers and stuff, go ahead and post those down in the comments below, and I'd love to hear what kind of stuff you guys are getting up to. Alright, thanks for watching. Talk at you later.